Chapter 28 of the Motor Boys in Mexico, or The Secret of the Buried City. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Ned Kruger. The Motor Boys in Mexico, or The Secret of the Buried City by Clarence Young. To the rescue. "Who is she?" asked Ned. "I don't know," replied the professor calmly. He seemed to take the appearance of a strange girl in the underground city as a happening that might occur at any time. "Where did she come from?" asked Jerry. "I can't tell you that either," went on the naturalist. "One thing I can say, though, and that is, this poor girl needs help. She must be hungry, and she's traveled a long distance. Her clothes show that." "What did she mean by speaking about Bob, saying Vasco Ballet had him, and for us to come quick?" asked Ned. "All in good time," replied the professor. "The thing to do now is to bring her out of her faint, and to get her something to eat. Ned, you make the coffee, and Jerry will heat up some chicken soup. Hurry now, boys." But the lads needed no urging. In a jiffy, the camp stove was going, and the hot coffee was soon ready. In the meanwhile, the professor, by use of some simple remedies he had always carried, brought the girl out of her faint. She opened her eyes and asked for a drink. The hot coffee, followed by a little of the warm soup, brought the color back to her face, and she was able to sit up. She stared at the strange surroundings and looked at the boys and the naturalist. "Me, Maximina," she said, speaking slowly. "You, Ned, Jerry, and Mr. Snowgrass?" Snodgrass, my dear young lady," replied the professor, bowing low. "Professor Uriah Snodgrass, A.M., Ph.D., M.D., F.R.G.S., A.Q.K., all of which is at your service." "Bob need you," said the girl simply. "He try to come, but he get catch." Yes, tell us about him. Where can we find him?" asked Jerry eagerly. "Me no speak English good," the girl replied. "You speak Spanish, senor?" "Si," answered the professor. Thereupon Maximina let forth a torrent of words that nearly overwhelmed the naturalist, yet he managed to understand what she said. Maximina told how she had been at the Mexicans' camp when Bob was caught there, she having been a captive for many years. She determined to help him escape, and did so when the opportunity offered. She told how she knew, in a general way, where the buried city was, as Bob had told her something about it, and she had overheard Vasco and his men talking about the locality when they had fallen down the tunnel. "But Bob's horse fell and threw him off," she explained in her native tongue. "I wanted to stay with him, but he told me to go on. Then Vasco came and got him, but I rode away, for I wanted to find you. I had hard work, and I lost my way several times. 3 days ago, my pony died, and I walked the rest of the distance." "Poor girl, you must be almost tired to death," said the professor. "I was tired, but it is happiness to find you, senors, for I know you will go and help Senor Bob." "Of course we will, right away," said the naturalist. "She seems to have taken a sudden liking to our friend Bob," commented Ned. "She's a mighty pretty girl, too. Don't you think so, Jerry?" "Be careful," laughed Jerry. "Don't go having any love affairs with beautiful Mexican maidens. I've read that they are a very jealous and quick-tempered nation. Besides, you're too young." "I'm a year older than Bob," maintained Ned. "Now, boys, what had we better do?" asked the professor. "Maximina can guide us to the place where Bob is held captive. Shall we go and give battle to these brigands?" "Sure," exclaimed Ned. "We have plenty of ammunition." "And they are about 10 to R1, put in Jerry. "But we have to do something," he added seriously. "Then we'll start as soon as we can get in shape," decided the professor. "I have a better plan than making a direct attack on the camp of the Mexicans, however. We will go to the authorities and ask for their aid. Maximina says there is a detachment of soldiers stationed about 30 miles from here, and on the line we must take to go to the camp. from which they are distant about 10 miles. "Bully!" cried Ned. "With a few soldiers to help us, we'll give those brigands and naughty Nixon such a licking that they'll never want another." The automobile was soon made ready. In it was packed all that remained of the provisions. The professor did up his precious specimens and curios, not forgetting the lead casket of jewels. The water tank was filled. Fortunately, there was still plenty of gasoline left. Jerry and Ned pumped up the tires. Maximina was invited to a seat in the rear, with the professor and the travelers taking a last look at the underground city. They started off. They went through the tunnel, up the incline, the fall of which had precipitated them into the shaft, and soon were on the level road, speeding to the rescue of Bob. After Vasco had secured his captive, following Bob and Maximina's flight, the brigand took measures to ensure that the prisoner would not get away again. Bob was placed in a regular dungeon, and outside the door was stationed a man with a gun. The lad was in low spirits. He began to give up hope, and the only thing that cheered him was the thought that perhaps Maximina might have gotten away and would notify his friends or the authorities. But Bob knew it was a remote chance, for he did not believe the frail girl could stand the long journey alone. He tried to learn something about her, whether she had been recaptured or not, but to all questions his guard, and the old woman who brought him food, returned but one answer, and that was, "No speak English, senor." Bob saw it was of no use to try to get out of the dungeon. It was built partially underground. The walls were of stone and the door a massive wooden one, while the single window was heavily barred. It was hot in the small cell, and Bob suffered very much, but he tried to keep up a brave heart. One day he heard voices outside of the dungeon window. He listened intently and found that Noddy and Vasco were talking. Vasco, of necessity, had to speak English in talking with Noddy, who understood only a little Spanish. "Have you got the money yet?" asked Noddy. "No, and I think we never will get it," replied Vasco angrily. "I don't believe the boy's the son of a rich banker at all. It's another one of your wild dreams, just like the gold mine the crazy professor was going to locate." "Bob's father is rich," maintained Noddy. "It ain't my fault that he won't send the cash." "Well, it's your fault for getting me into this muss," went on Vasco. "And it will be your fault if we don't get some money pretty soon. The men are mad and I won't be able to manage 'em in a few days. They blame it all on you, so you better look out." "Do you suppose they will kill me?" faltered Noddy. "I shouldn't be surprised," said Vasco coldly. At that instant, Bob heard someone come galloping up on a horse. It seemed to be a messenger, for he heard the steed coming to a stop, while a man jumped down and began talking rapidly in Spanish. "What is it? Has Bob's father sent the money?" asked Noddy. "Money? No," snapped the leader of the brigands. "But the soldiers are after us. We must get out of here." Bob's heart thrilled with hope. Perhaps, after all, Maximina had been able to send help. He almost laughed in his happiness, thinking he would soon be free. But his hopes were dashed to the ground when, a few minutes later, his guard came into his cell, quickly bound his hands and feet, wrapped a long cloak about him, and with the aid of another Mexican, carried him out of the cell. Bob realized from the change of the air that he was being carried into the open. He could see nothing because of the cloak about his head, but he could hear much bustle and confusion. Men were running here and there, while Vasco was giving quick orders. Then the sound of the automobile being started was heard. Bob felt himself lifted into the car and, a few seconds later, he felt the vibration that told he was being carried away again, this time in Noddy's machine. As the messenger had told Vasco, the soldiers were on their way to the camp of the kidnappers. The boys and the professor had reached the garrison, and telling their story, had induced the commander to send a detachment to capture the Mexicans. But the troops traveled slowly, and one of Vasco's friends, who happened to be hanging about the fort, hearing of the contemplated raid, mounted a swift horse and rode off to give the alarm. So when, a few hours after Vasco had fled with his men and his captive, the troops galloped up, led by Jerry, Ned, Maximina, and the professor in the automobile, they found the camp deserted. "The birds have flown," exclaimed the captain of the troopers. "We may as well go back." "No," cried Jerry. "We must take after them. Bob must be rescued." "But how can we tell where they went?" asked the captain. "That woman can tell you," exclaimed Maximina, pointing to an aged crone who was trying to escape observation in one of the huts. End of chapter 28.